In this video, we'll create a trigger to spawn the anime characters. And after the nest is destroyed, it will stop spawning the anime characters. And then we'll go to game object and we'll create a cube, and we'll use this as the spawn trigger. So for testing purpose, we're going to make it a little bit bigger and place it in front of the player. Okay, and we'll turn off mesh render and check on its trigger. So whenever the player enters this trigger, we want it to spawn enemy characters. So here, let's go to the script folder, and I want you to drop in the enemy spawn v1, the first script. So we have two, so I'm going to show you one by one. So bring it in here, and also go to the sound effects, and I want you to drop in the civil defense alarm sound. So we're going to use it as the spawn sound. Alright, so here let's select the trigger, and let's go to add component and add this script. So here prefab to spawn, so we need to spawn a prefab. So here, as you can see, we have created this score folder, which includes the attack function, the health trigger, everything, right? So we'll go back to the score folder, and so here just rename it as score prefab. That means we'll create a prefab based on that. So just drag it into here, so it will create a prefab. And you can see that it immediately updated to a blue color, so that means this object is a prefab. So now we can just delete it since we have done with it, right? And then select the trigger and go down below here for a prefab to spawn. So we're going to drop this prefab onto it. Spawn location, so we're going to create empty, and here we're going to say spawn location. And we can bring it backward, so the enemy will spawn from here. And we'll also create a spawn sound and add a audio source to it. Check off play on weak, so it'll be called once the script is referenced, and loop it. And we want to change it to a 3D sound and linear roll off, and for max distance. So here we want our player to be able to hear it from a far distance, so we will do 80. And for the audio clip, let's drop in the civil defense alarm sound, which is imported. Okay, and then let's say go back to the trigger spawn, and let's drop in the location to here, enemy spawn sound to here, and this trigger is this trigger itself. Okay, so now let's test the play. So in the beginning, as you can see, nothing is here. Okay, and if I walk to the front, as I enter the trigger, it will play the alarm sound, and it will initiate the scores every 6 seconds. See, it will initiate a new score every 6 seconds. So let's take a look at the script. So if I go to the trigger spawn and double click on it, open it, so here is it. So on trigger enter, if the object tagged as a player enter this trigger, so you're going to play this sound, the enemy spawn sound, and you're going to start a coroutine, which is this function, and also deactivate this trigger, the spawn trigger, because we don't want it to activate this function multiple times. So for the coroutine here, what we're going to do is it's going to make a clone of a prefab object. So basically, you're going to initiate a prefab, which we have attached that is the prefab of skull. Okay, so you're going to initiate as a game object in this scene, and you're going to wait for 6 seconds, and then you're going to start it again. So as long as this coroutine is 2, you're going to repeat this function. So you're going to initiate a clone of the skull every 6 seconds. Okay, so now let's make it a little bit more interesting. So now we have the alert sound, and I also want to have a model like a flashing lights to remind the player that the enemy is spawning, and we'll give the player a way to turn off the spawn. Okay, so let's go to the model folder, and let's go to here. Let's drop in the alarm model, and let's drop in this model in the scene. And give it a mesh collider so our player will be able to collide with it. And maybe make it a little bit smaller. Okay, and let's make a texture models, the material for it. So this will be alarm M1, and we'll give it this material. Okay, and drop it to the side, and then material 2 and metal texture, and we'll apply it to the top here, this one. Okay, make sure you get it to that one, and also this ring, and then we'll get the third material. And for the third one, I'll just keep the white color, okay, and drop it onto this object. Here we go. So this is our alarm model, okay, and let's get to the sound, parent it to the sound, and then zero out the position X and Z. So now it should be at the same location as the spawn sound. Here we go. Right, so now we're going to put them together, and then let's create a pointer light and move this light to the right direction. Okay, and for the range, let's just lower it down to about 2 or something, maybe a little bit more, 1.6. And let's get a red for the color, and increase the intensity so we can see the effects here, maybe about 3. And then we'll just make a duplication, and for this duplicate object, I'm going to lower down the intensity to about 1.5 and bring it a little bit closer to the light, and this way maybe a little bit. Okay, and then I would drop this one into the first one. Okay, and for this light, I'm going to apply a script, which is the flickering light we have used in the first lesson. And for the mean wait time, I'm going to put 0.01. Max wait time, I'm going to put 0.1. So you're going to flash. So this light is going to flash in. That one it'll keep still. And I'm going to rename it to red light, and then I'll make a duplication, and I'll see blue light, and I'll make this light to the opposite direction. Okay, and then I'll go to these two lights and change their color to blue. Okay, so we have 2 lights, and then I will select the alarm, press F key to focus my view on it, and I'll create a cube, and here I'm gonna see alarm lights, and I'm gonna make it smaller, place it on the top of the light, very small. Alright, And here I'm going to create animation for it. So make sure you are currently in this folder, and then go to the animation tab. If you don't see it, just click on here, add a tab, add a animation. Alright, so let me see. Double check if the rotation values are 0. Okay, so now here we're going to create an animation clip. So I'm going to say alarm light anime. Okay, and start to record my keyframes. So at about maybe frame 10, I'm gonna rotate it. So here we can reference this value. So I'll type in 180, and then at frame 20. So here I'm going to type in 360. So you're going to rotate a whole circle. Hold on. Yeah, you'll rotate a whole circle. And then we can go back to project and select the alarm light, and as you can see, it already applied this animation to it, and we can just double click on this animation controller, not this one. Double click on this animation controller, you can see that this alarm light animation is set as default, so that's what we want. So let's select this animation clip, make sure the loop time is checked on. Okay, and then go back to here, go back to the scene, and let's draw both of these two lights under this group. So if you play testing the animation, you should see that the light will keep circling. Okay, and we can select this alarm and turn off the mesh render. Oh, not this one. Here, alarm lights. So turn off the mesh render, so it'll disable the cube mesh. Alright, so now we can select the alarm light and turn it off, and then go to the trigger for spawn, and we can double click on the script to open it. So here we'll add one object, so we can just duplicate this part, paste it here. So game object, alarm light. Okay, so once the player entered this trigger, the alarm light, you're going to set as active, true, so it'll be activated. And we'll just save this script and come back here. Now if you select the trigger for spawn, you should see the new object we added, so we can just drop it to here. And if you test play, in the beginning, as you can see, the alarm is not on. Okay, if we enter the trigger, you'll see the light is already on. Okay, so now next stage will give the player a way to turn off the spawn. So let's select the alarm, press F key to focus, and let's create a cube. And for this cube, I'll say trigger spawn off. And let's make it smaller, higher. And we can turn off mesh render so we can see it. So basically we'll use it to cover this alarm. And here we'll check on its trigger. Okay, and then we can just drag it into the alarm folder. Now let's go to the sound effects and let's drop in the alarm destroyed sound effects. Okay, and also go to the scripts and we'll drop in here the spawn off. Then let's select the spawn off trigger and let's add the script. So we'll add a spawn off script. So trigger for spawn will be this one. So that when we hit the spawn off trigger, it's going to turn off the trigger for spawn. And alarm lights will be this one. And enemy spawn sound will be here, this one. And spawn destroyed sound, we'll create that in a second. and this trigger will be the trigger itself. Alright, so now let's select the spawn sound, press F key to focus the view on it, and then we can just make a duplication. And here we're gonna see spawn off sound. And then here for the audio clip, we're going to drop in the alarm destroyed to here. And check off loop and check on play on wake. And we'll turn it off, so we'll deactivate it. So once this object destroyed, you're going to activate this object and you're going to play this sound. Okay, so now let's select this trigger and go down below here, and let's drop this sound to here. And the function here is very simple. So whenever the bootnet hit, the bootnet enter this trigger, so you're going to turn off the enemy spawn sound, turn on the spawn destroyed sound, and turn off the light, the trigger for spawn, and also turn off this trigger. And then we can select this spawn off trigger and turn it off, because I don't want it to function before we actually spawn any enemy. And then I'll select this trigger for spawn, and I will go to the script. So here I will add the spawn off trigger. So here game object, and I'll add here for spawn off trigger. So once we have entered here, the player entered this spawn trigger, so you're going to spawn, and also you're going to set the spawn off trigger as 2 activated. Okay, so we'll be able to shoot it and turn off the spawn. And then come back to here, and with the trigger spawn selected, here you can see that we'll have to assign the alarm light to it, and spawn off trigger will apply the trigger spawn off to here. Okay, so now let's do a test. So in the beginning, if I shoot here, nothing gonna happen. If I walk in here, you're going to spawn enemies, and if I hit here, you're going to play the explosion sound, and it will stop spawning, right? Okay, so this is the whole function, and now we can customize this whole thing. So we can just duplicate this function and place it to multiple places. So let's see. We can select this alarm, press F key to focus, and then we can create a new game object, and we can see spawn group. Okay, and then you can place all these objects in here. And so this will be the first one, and if you want to place it to a different location, you can just duplicate this whole group and place it to a different location. Let me just do a test for you. Okay, so for the first one, let's see if I want to customize it a little bit. I can make the spawn location to maybe here from the door. Okay, and the alarm sound, and all of these 4 objects, I can place it here. Okay, on the side of the building. And the trigger, maybe you can make it bigger, so your player will never miss it. So definitely he will step on it. So we can make it this bigger and cover this whole walk area. And for the second one, I'll just keep it as it is, and you can customize it, place it to a different location. So now let's do a test. So if I walk to here, it'll trigger the first alert, and I can shoot and close it. And then if I enter here, So this is the second alarm. I can turn it off by shoot on it, and then I have to kill these enemies. Okay. Yeah, so this is the whole function. So basically you can duplicate this spawn group as many as you want and place it to different locations. So those are the bumps you hide in this map. Whenever your players step into it, you're gonna spawn these enemy characters, and you have to turn off the spawn and kill all the enemies and continue your journey. Alright, so now let's take a look at the second version of the spawn script. So in this script, the function is exactly the same as the first version. Right. The only difference between this script and the first script is the first version, we apply it to a trigger. So whenever the player enters the trigger, it's going to spawn the characters, right? And for the second version, we don't need the trigger. So if, let's say, if you apply this script to any object, and then when you start the game, when the game is awake, it will spawn a character every 6 seconds. So here we have 3 game objects. The first game object is not a public object, so basically it will be defined here in the game. So that is the spawn clone, which is the clone character, the character we going to spawn. Okay, and then a public game object, prefab to spawn, so that is the character we will initiate in the game. And spawn location, so that is the location where you're going to spawn. And also we have a to float, which first one is the next spawn time and a spawn rate. Okay, so here's the function. Whenever the current time of the game, so let's say when we start the game, you're going to count the time. So from 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So if our current time is bigger to or equal to the next spawn time. So for example, if the next spawn time is 6 seconds, so when we reach the 6 second, we'll process this function. So you're going to spawn a character, and also the next spawn time, it will be our current time plus the spawn rate, which is the 6. So for example, when we reach it to 6 seconds, and then the next spawn time will be 6 seconds plus 6, so it will be 12. So it will process again, and once we reach the 12, it will spawn another character and comes here and then processes again. So basically it will process a character every 6 seconds. And here's the spawn function. So when it is spawn, so it's going to get a spawn clone, which is a game object. So it will create a game object in the game named spawn clone. So this clone character is the prefab that we initiated in the game as a game object. So that's the function of this whole script. So to be short, if you want the enemy to spawn in the beginning of the game, use the second version. If you want the character to be spawned when your player enters the trigger, use the first version.